guys, check this out. This is really neat stuff. This is a legacy product from Elele. And you'll notice right now, if you get the bundle with the Infiltrator and Arachnoid, it's right around the same price as if you just get Arachnoid. So that's why I was showing the bundle, because Infiltrator is really, really cool too. But now the reason I'm bringing this up in the first place is that Arachnoid is not only a really cool robo spider, but he also comes with a collection of anti-blocks. Here it is. So now this little video here will show you the various anti-blocks that come with the thing, okay? And it's really cool. You might as well just let it play through because these are really neat, and part of the reason why, well, it's actually the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So with these we're not using in this trip, but these are the ones that I'm talking about. We've got the start of the walk cycle, and the walk cycle comes both as in motion as well as in place. Okay, so here's the actual cycle of the walk, which is pretty cool. You know, it's a really cool spider walk. And then you've got the stop. Comes walking in and he stops. And it's just a short half a second anti-block for the stop. And then Share CG isn't around anymore. You used to be able to get that free Gatling gun. I'm not sure if that's going to be made available elsewhere or not, but regardless, okay, so we've got Arachnoid, and I've always wanted this from the AntFarm, and I finally got it, largely because Slater and I were on his machine looking at ways to use these anti-blocks on something like this, okay? And there's a lot working against that kind of idea. And, Slater being the under the hood kind of person, he's looking at it in different ways. So seeing this guy last night, I got excited about this project and I wanted to try out the idea that I was discussing. And so here, this is this is what I came up with. Now, before I forget, okay, uh, so I don't forget to come back about this. Now, these uh these legs right here, okay, I'm not going to hide those. I'm going to use those, and to help them match really nicely with the spider bot, I used Jen Greenlee's, it's called Just Bits, in her their shader presets. Okay, and Just Bits uses these different metal textures and converts them to an I-ray shader. And then, of course, I use why don't I just click on one and look? I have to hide my VDBs, and the fog box is hidden. Okay, I just control select all of the different legs. And so there's the idea. And I like Jen Greenlee's shader presets because they get the initial state of the iRay shader for me, and then I can always tweak them from there. And she gives you utilities to tweak them from there as well. But down here is what I'm talking about. Is I use these. Here are some of the utilities, just tiling, and I was going through different presets and got to this 10 by 10, 20 by 20, and 30 by 30, and was looking at all the different I mean, it looks kind of cool too if you leave these big, the rivets, if you leave those big. But in the end, I kind of liked this effect, which was going between the 10 by 10 and 20 by 20 with just 15 by 15. And then I just messed around, just started typing different values into the horizontal tiles compared to the vertical tiles. And it each number that I type in here turns out to be a pretty cool effect. And I just landed on 7 without checking 8. I was working my way from 5 up, and I liked this so much that I just stopped. Okay, now I'm getting way beyond myself, but just in case, because uh, I know that by the time I get done showing you what I'm going to show you, that I would forget to come back and show you what I did with this shader, and I want everybody to kind of know how that came about because it's pretty cool. Okay, so that's the perspective cam. Now, I had already saved this little animation out with just the new concoction that I created, this spider, and with Rosie inside. Let's get to the actual camera again. So Rosie's inside there, and that is inside of this guy using the pose that comes with this, which is for Genesis 3. And being the Bone Minion fan that I am, I have the Bone Minion that goes from Genesis 3 to Genesis 8. So yeah, I used this and then gave it a little tweak for Rosie. And so that's why we're going beyond what I've done with the Arachnoid anti-blocks here. And if we come back here, we can see that I've added some scene elements, but I don't do that until after I'm completely done with the character. Okay, so here, for example, now I would have to use this same camera because the camera is in motion, but now I can make any background I want for this. But if I don't use the same camera, it's going to look like the feet are sliding because of the camera movement that's in here. But that's no big deal. You just open this scene, drag a scene in there, hide everything, and render a background for it. It's that simple. And you can also use that same approach to add, foreground and midground and additional animated background, elements. You can just keep making layers. That's how I work. Okay, and then so then when I added this stuff here, including the VDBs that I just hid. Now, those are animated VDBs, both from the base pack with Josh Darling and Dimension Theory's VDB Essentials, Prep and Animate. For that, I have this smokestack. I rotated it and have it so it's coming instead of going up and arcing over the top of buildings, I have it coming around the corner sideways like this. And then in Dimension Theory's wind pack, I have the flowing haze going in here. And then in his Inferno pack for animated VDBs, I have this windy fire going on here. And this is really cool because you can add different elements like that. Well, let me just play this through so you can kind of see what's going on here. Yeah, so for the background, I just added a couple of stonemasons, city ruins buildings. And to dress out the rest of it, I just plunked in a block from Urban Sprawl 3. And you can see I could have done a nicer job of making sure that the legs aren't running into stuff. So, but basically, I just wanted to make the point that this is really cool. So what this is Arachnoid wearing the Spider-Bot mech as a suit, sort of. Okay, see that? And these are the white legs, or you could use the Black Widow. And so Spider-Bot mech uses 6 legs, okay, which is fine. It doesn't matter. You could turn this the way we're doing this, you could make all 8. However, and that was actually my plan at first, except that these front 2 paws on Arachnoid look really nice if you just leave them as the stabby, feely legs that they are. Okay. And if you watch the way they're working along, yeah, say they want those to be the docile ones. They want those to be the limber ones. And these other ones are the ones that are used to attack and defend. And so they have the heavy armor on them. All right. And then the only differences with the cockpit here is that I gave it rosy colors. We've got rosy liquid instead of being the gross green. It's a rosy pink, and then she's got rosy pink lights on top, and then the rest of the lights are all teal, and and then inside it comes with a green texture map for these screens. And if I show you here, uh, oh, those are actually a separate prop. There's the screens. And if we look at the screens in here, they come with this green, and they look really, really cool. So let me just get over here. So I was playing around with different emission colors. It comes with that green map in the emission color, and I wanted to change it up for Rosie because I want to use this same spider for the opposition, but that's going to be with the original toxic looking green. What I did is instead of just changing this color chip with this panel in there, I just removed that map from the emission color. And well, first I pay attention to where it is in here so that I can then come back in here and find it right there. And I loaded that into cutout opacity, relying on that black to cut out this. And then where there's the green, that's going to act as like a gray scale in the opacity. So it makes it a little bit uh, invisible, but not very much. So, and then I also cranked up the luminance to make that really bright. And then in the creative card, I'm always talking about making my ghost lights. And so I have a little ghost light right in here. Now, Rosie isn't animated. Her hair was simulated, but just for the first frame. Okay, so she's just basically a still figure, except that her face might go through a little bit of a change in this little area right here. But this was mostly a test for the robot, not for Rosie. But if we look in my library here, if we go to let's go to Annie blocks, and we'll go to Elele, and these are the ones that come with Arachnoid. You can see that right here I added my new pose preset after I was done, because Rosie's small. So in order to make the included pose work, I made some changes to it. And by the time I was done, now I've got the pose right here, where I would normally go to find Ileli's anti-blocks for the Arachnoid, so that I can always find it. Hey, cool. So just to show real quick how I do that, and I have to quit moving it around. It doesn't matter because I'm gonna start a new scene without saving because I've already saved that scene. And let's reset the camera and turn our ground back on. There we go. Just so that we're not lost. All right, now in content library, like I was saying before, Elele is a legacy product, and the legacy products that load as a CR2, a poser format. I install those, and I often use the store page information to determine whether I'm going to install it as a poser product or a DAZ Studio product. And if it doesn't come with a DUF as the actual loader, it comes with a CR2 or a PP2 instead. And it's definitely this is definitely a poser format thing, which was common back before DAZ Studio 4.0. There was a lot of DAZ products were made for poser. That's what they were. Okay, so anyway, I install those differently. So I put those in my poser formats, and for this particular guy, my sorting is robots. And so we go to robots and figures, and I just find Elele, Arachnoid, and there's the Infiltrator. But I just bring in Arachnoid, and now the funny thing is that he is facing east-west rather than north-south. And most everything else in the store is facing north-south. So that brought up the question as to what to do from here when it comes to transferring anti-blocks from this guy to someone else, because they're all going to be rotated in the y-axis by 90 degrees. But I wouldn't do that anyway. I wouldn't work in a way where I'm trying to get these anti-blocks to work on something else. I want to use this guy as the driver. So that is performed as simply as at frame 0 here. I just type 90 into here, and now he is facing north or south. It's uh, he's facing the camera when we are on when we see front on this little cube here. That's kind of the default on how Genesis and everybody else loads, and he has a beautiful center right in the it's perfect. And so now, if this ever changes throughout our work, that's fine. As long as we know that for this, for making the suit, I'm putting him at 90. And one thing that's kind of cool about Elele's Arachnoid here is Elele really, I remember when he came out with this, and the product was really created to be user deluxe, absolute deluxe edition for that's why it came with anti-blocks. It comes with a these transport things, and the turret that all fits in the back here. When the back opens up, you reveal these guys, and inside here is a nice little cockpit. So if we open the dome, select the seat and zoom in, you see we've got a nice little cockpit with a dashboard and joysticks and all that stuff. He's really, really cool. And so I like Arachnoid just the way he is as his own character. Let's see here. And it comes with anti-blocks that operate all this stuff. And you see all these little gears move and all that stuff. And it's really cool. Okay, so I'm just gonna undo a couple times. All right, back up and getting back on topic. Anyway, with this deluxeness that Elele gave us, if we go to the pose category in the, how poser libraries work, you go to pose, and then there is one that is called zero, and that's just with all of the rigging at zero. And if you'll notice right here, I'm looking at it from the front. So by applying that, I have undone the fact that I had it rotated in Y by 90. So I just do that again. Like I said, it's no big deal if that strays from there. It's just that for our purposes on what I'm going to be doing, we're going to keep putting it back there every time that differs. Okay, so now I've got Arachnoid in here, and if I come to uh go, oh, might as well show you that we've got different materials that we can apply to Arachnoid. Okay, I don't. really, I haven't done that. But okay, so I just wanted to point that out while we're here. Okay, now I'm going to exit the poser formats and go back into my DAZ 3D content library. And if I just hover over some of these, you'll see that we've got open and close back. And then we've got walk in place. We've got walk start, walk stop, and walk. And it's a nice little construction kit that works very well with each other. And then we have Rosie's little pose here that's custom. Okay, but so even though we've rotated the thing in 90 degrees, we have this thing working. Okay, that's exactly what we want. Okay, so with that in mind, to find Spider-Bot Mech, we go to figures, which again is kind of going back to like a poser style. But yeah, right at the top we have AntFarm, and Sea Beast would be cool as a spider, huh? No, we're not going to do that. All right. So Spider-Bot Mech, and he's got poses as well. But we're just going to load in Spider-Bot Mech. I'm going to clear my selection and load in the Spider-Bot. So the way I work when I'm doing this kind of thing, it might seem kind of tedious, but it's really powerful and it really doesn't take very long. So bear with me for just a real quick moment here and I'll show you how cool this can be. So what we want is to have the spider bot. If we have this, we can open the hatch and we have grasping hand poses and we can twist the rear jar. Or you can even hide the rear jar, but I'm going to control Z that. Okay, so we've got the spider bot mech in there, okay? And he matches up in a pretty darn nice spot. All right, so what I'm going to do here is with him selected, I'm going to start by making a duplicate. No, that's not what I want to do. I want to duplicate him with hierarchy, which is Control Shift D. Okay, Control Shift D gives you a duplicate. So if I turn this one off, turn it on, okay, we now have a duplicate of the spider bot. And so I'm going to turn this one off and go back to the original. And I'm just going to come into the geometry editor, I'm going to right click and go geometry selection, select by, and it could go face groups. I'm going to go surfaces and go leg section. Select by surfaces, leg section 2. Selection, select by surfaces, leg section 3. Geometry selection, select by surfaces, leg section 4. And now I've still got some lights in here. Okay. And so I want to get rid of those. So I'm going to right click and go selection mode. Oh, it's still in lasso selection. Normally it's in drag selection, and so you get this little thing, and you can paint your selection in. But right click and change your selection mode to lasso selection, and now holding Control will add my dragging to what I already have selected. And so I'm just going to start with my mouse down here, and I'm going to hold down Control. I'm going to draw a loop right around these legs, looking at it from the front like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to add those light thingies to my selection. Okay. So now I'm going to hold the Alt key and drag a selection around those so that I deselect those because those I want to keep, these I want to get rid of. Okay. But only for this guy. So with the original spider bot selected, I have this selection in geometry editor. And now I'm just going to right click in the window. And notice that I made a duplicate first, but plus I always have a backup. I'm never ever going to save ever over the original product. That's how it comes. That's your backup. So in here, I can do whatever I want. If I mess up, I can start over again. Okay, so I come in here, right click, geometry editing, and I'm just going to delete the selected polygons. And it's going to say, are you sure you want to get rid of uh, a million? No, 196,000. I'm like, yeah, yeah. I wasn't looking at it that way, but yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay, now what's really cool about the fact that we made a duplicate first is if we unhide this guy and we select him, while we're in the geometry editor, our selection transfers to this one now. So that is perfect because now we can just go right click, geometry selection, invert selection, right click, geometry editing, delete selected polygons. There. Now, when we turn this off, we have no legs. When we turn this off, we have no body. Okay. Just for a visual here, it doesn't matter what you don't have to do this. I'm just going to call this parts. Okay, so we've got our spider bot and then we've got our spider bot parts. And what we do is every time we want to make a new part for our suit, we're going to make a spider bot suit for Arachnoid. And so for every piece of the suit, we want to hit Shift Control D, even though you only need to use a regular duplicate, but I don't have a shortcut for regular duplicate. So duplicate node hierarchies is Control Shift D. So that's why I do that. So now I have this and I'm going to start here. So if I look at this in Geometry Editor and I go geometry selection, select by face groups, now we can see that because it no longer has the groups that have the head and all of the other things, all we have are the pieces that are in the legs. Okay. So we've got a tire, we've got a thigh, and we've got a shin for each thing. Okay. So I want to start with this piece right here. And for that, I'm just going to use the tire and the shin. So I've duplicated my spider parts. So I'm going to call this front, right, shin, foot. There we go. Front, right, shin, foot. That's my new name for, each piece. This will be front right, that'll be mid right, and that'll be rear right. And then same thing over here, but left. And then this will be the same thing, except it'll be called thigh. Okay. And in my design interpretation, I decide to leave these unhindered, just because I like how the slender looks compared to the armored. But using this technique, you'll see that you could easily add armor in here too, and you can do it in many different ways. In fact, this particular thing that I made here, there's a knee piece that I can and probably will add. I just didn't do it. Okay, so we have a duplicate of the spider bot. We have a duplicate of spider bot parts. And then we have a duplicate of that I've renamed right shin foot. I'm going to copy this name because I'm going to use that name across the board for several pieces, for six pieces with little changes. So I'm going to copy that because I did that duplicate prematurely. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that. Spiderbot parts, the one that's just the legs. Okay, before I do any of that, before I duplicate that again, what I first need to do is go edit, figure, rigging, convert figure to prop. Okay. And so now that there is no longer a hierarchy here, except that there is a prop in there called screens. And we see that it's screens 2 because we have a screens already in our main spider bot. So we don't need this one. We can just go ahead and delete that one. And so now we have a single piece right here that is our spider bot parts. Okay. And it has no rigging. We're just using it for parts. Now is where I'm going to Control Shift D to make a duplicate of it. And then I'm going to highlight that name and Control V, that name that I copied. So I've got front right shin foot. Okay. And so with that guy selected, I am going to, we are in geometry editor. So I'm going to go geometry selection, select by face groups. And I'm going to go front right wheel. Tire, it's called front right tire. Okay. And then I'm going to right click again, geometry selection, select by face groups, and I'm looking for right front shin. Front right shin. There we have it. Front right shin. So now we have that selected, and then we go geometry selection, invert selection, and then we right click and go geometry editing, delete selected polygons. Yes. And so now if I'm going to undo this, but if I move that, you'll see that we have this separate piece and it's all on its own. I'm going to undo that because I want to orient this thing. So, and I want its, because right now, if we select this, this is its point of origin. When I'm talking about origins, this is what I'm talking about, is where your gizmo is, which happens to be where translations, scaling, and rotations will all take place. So if we do this, you see it's all and on the figure level, that's what we need. That's what we want. I'm going to undo that. But for this guy, what we need is a null. Let's create a null. And I'm just going to leave them named null. And I'm going to take that null and I'm going to use this neat little triangle here and just bring it right up to, you see that little, it's making a square here. Okay. And, but my little crosshairs, my green and red crosshairs are on this left side. So I'm dragging that left corner right to where I want that knee hinge to be. And then I'm going to rotate around this way and get it on the part that I want. Now I can just zoom way in using that target tool. And wow, I didn't do such a bad job just eyeing it up, but okay. And now I can take this and with that selected, I select my front right shin foot with a control click. Okay, so I start with the null and then I control select the front right shin foot. And you can see how our little gizmo or widget moves back to property center 000, which is where the origin of right. Anyway, okay, so now I use this. I've been showing people how I really like. Uh, well, it's essential. I use mCasual's change orientation, so I have a button for it right here, and I just fire that up and set origin to marker 1. Just click that button. There's a lot of other functionality to this, but we don't need to worry about that. We just set origin to marker 1, and you see that widget just snapped right to where I had the null. That's what it does. So now when we have our orientation, um, to better match this with our arachnids that's zeroed out, we just take Z rotate right here and we type in -45. And now we have a really nice match. And we can just take that and use this little triangle gizmo and drag that right over top of that leg and zero in on it. And uh, kind of position it how you like, except you have to keep in mind that I was talking about these feelers, and I like to keep these feelers unhindered. You don't have to do that. You can go ahead and armor it up if you want, but I don't want it that way. I like it with the armor just on these six and leaving the front two, in my opinion, the way they should be. Okay, so now I'm going to watch this tip because the Anablocks do a wonderful job of using these tips. They that's where it traverses the ground. And so I just grab this and kind of very carefully get it to that tip. Okay. And this is going to be a parented prop. So it can always be adjusted uh, anytime, day or night. Okay. So we've got that one. And then while we're at it, we can go Shift Control D to duplicate that with its hierarchy, but it has no hierarchy, so it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to select this and I'm going to hit Control V. And instead of front right shin foot, I'll change front to mid. Okay. And so now I have front right shin foot, and the mid right shin foot is right on top of the other. So I'll just drag him over here and check. Now I'm going to visually check where the point is. Very nice. Okay. So I'm looking at this tip right here, but then plus I'm also looking at the height of how the armor lines up on that leg. And it doesn't matter. It's just a visual thing. And it will also play into, as far as this end, it will play into how that reacts with the ground. And you wouldn't even have to include the tire if you don't want to. I included the tire because I like it. But you could just leave these points there, and then you just have to get close and leave these points as the point of contact with the ground, and that would look cool too. In fact, I'll probably make a version like that. I might like that better. We'll see. Okay, and then I'm just going to Shift Control D again, and I'm gonna go ahead and call that one rear. Rear right shin foot. And I'll select that again and bring it back right over here. And see if I know I'm going to want to come down. So it's going to end up somewhere right in here, I think. Let's bring them over this way a little bit, center them out. You're never ever going to have your spider like this unless maybe you're going to have them in a repair shop situation, and that would be fine too. But don't worry about these things feeling cramped because you're never going to see them this cramped ever again. This is just a way that makes it a lot easier to get this parenting. For one, We only changed this one item to negative 45. Okay. And then we're not having to go through a big process of trying to line up angles because, you know, and I'm not having to cut out all of these separate pieces. I could if they were different. And in fact, on this one, I did. On this whole right side, I didn't work the way I'm working now. I actually brought this piece from the duplicate. I made all of these six parts separately. And then when I got to this side, I'm like, I don't have to do that. They're all the same. I think they're all the same. Um, yeah, so I just did that, and then I just repeated that same thing with the thigh. You just go back to uh, prop spider bot parts. That's why I named it that way, so that you could see visually in this video how I'm keeping track of that. And that again, as a reminder, is all of the legs, none of the body. Okay. And so now I can do the same thing here. We've got that selected. Before I make any selection with Geometry Editor, I need to uh, Shift Control D. Whenever I want to make a new part, like I said at the beginning, a new part requires a new duplicate. Eventually you're going to be able to just delete this duplicate. But while you're making new parts, you're going to want to duplicate that first, then extract your parts from it. Okay, so here we still have our selection, which is handy, but we don't need it. So I'm going to go geometry selection, clear selection, and I'm going to right click geometry selection, select by face groups. And this time, all I want is the front right thigh. Now, I'm going to show you this front right knee. This is the part right here that I am not using on my current one. And Uh, it wasn't an oversight. It was a decision that I made. But since this thing comes with this wonderful piece, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one of these pieces and use it through, all over the place on these legs in different spots, just to doll things up a bit, just just for fun. Okay. But now I'm going to clear that selection because I didn't do that in my example, so I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to go geometry selection, select by face groups, and I'm going to go front right thigh. Okay. And now I am going to geometry selection, invert selection, and geometry editing. And before I do this, I make sure that I did make a duplicate of prop spider bot parts. Because if I didn't make a duplicate of that first, I'm about to lose everything else. So um, if I didn't make a duplicate, I can make a duplicate now, and I'll still have my selection on my new duplicate. But now that I've inverted my selection, I'm going to geometry editing and I'm going to delete selected polygons. And it warns you right here, fair and square, this cannot be undone. Would you like to continue? So undo will not uh, undo this. It will undo whatever you did before you were working with Geometry Editor. Uh, no, not that's not true because selections and things like that do work for. It's just that deleting of polygons. Okay, so now I I uh I don't really need this null here anymore, except that um I have the height here and like I said before, I was copying over all of these different parts. So originally, I didn't use this null for the thigh. I made a new null, but I could easily just use that same null and just reposition it. But by leaving this one here, is now when I do this side, I can just drag it along this axis and I'll have the same type of orientation. It's still going to be approximate, and it doesn't matter because we're parenting it. But that's where the rotation, translation, and scaling occurs on the figure, on the part. Okay, so now I'm going to select this one and I'm going to bring it right in where I think that the thigh piece should be oriented. And I have to remember to come here and line it up front to rear. And I'm not lining it up to Arachnoid because it's not attached to Arachnoid yet. I'm aligning it up to its original piece, you know. So this is where this thigh orientation will be. And now I can use this guy and set it just like that. And then before I go any further, I'm going to select this name and Control V and front right. And I'm going to change this ending part to thigh. Okay, front right thigh. And now I can select that and copy that. Oh, I don't have to. Okay. So I select the new null, double check, make sure yep, that's the way I like it. And then I control select the front right thigh and I use the orientation changer again, set origin to marker 1 and exit. And now deselect the null. And now before we went -45 to bring this out. This time I'm going to go +45 and the Z rotation. Z rotation 45, boom, and see what that does. And now I can hide my original prop spider parts. There we go. And now I want to bring this guy over to this leg, kind of centered like that. And then bring him over. And so this is where I was saying that it would be really easy to add more of these parts to this spider. I'm bringing them pretty close to the kneecap. Okay, and I'm looking at these wonderful bits that are going to add detail to all of this. And so on my original, I put it right about here, and then I used that as my idea for how to line up all of the other ones. And so we have this little tab. Oop, I didn't want to do that. Undo view trade. There we go. And so now we've got that piece. And now I could just duplicate that and put it here. You know, I could even, scale it and do other things. But I really ended up, I like the way it is just like this. So now I'm just going to Shift Control D to make a new one and bring that right over here. And I'm just going to change that. Oop, I did the wrong one. No, it doesn't matter. Well, it does in the end. I'm going to undo that. Let's go enter and I'll go undo. Okay, now I want to select this one and I'm going to go get rid of the suffix and change the prefix to mid. Mid right thigh. And that's the one I'll move over here. And I'll zoom in on it and take a look. Yeah, that turned out really good, just without any fuss. Okay, so then I will Shift Control D again. And once again, I'll select this one and remove the suffix and change the prefix to rear. And some of you may have like a mirror geometry type of thing, or have your own tips or tricks on how to mirror geometry. And if you do, you could just take all of these pieces, duplicate them, and mirror them for the opposite side. But what I did, since I'm still relatively new with Daz Studio. The only thing I really do in here is this sort of thing, as well as animate. Animating is the bulk of what I do, and so that's why there's a lot of different things that you guys do that a lot of things that I might be missing that you guys know all about. But anyway, so to get these guys onto the arachnoid is easy because and whenever you see me go up here a lot and just click that, and that's just because a lot of the times I don't want these widgets in my way. It's too easy for me to just grab things and move them when I don't want to. Well, not only that, but I like to see what I'm doing without all of that. So anyway, now I click right here and it automatically selects uh, R2C on the Arachnoid's rig. And so now all I have to do is select this guy and drag him on there. Okay, now this guy is parented to this guy. And so now I can select this guy, R3C, and then I can just select this guy and drag him onto R3C. And then I can select this guy, R4C, and then select this guy and drag him onto R4C. Okay, so now I've got the shin feet all parented, so I can do the same thing here. It's the B we're going after now, and it's the thigh, front right thigh. So I come up here and I just drag that to make sure that I got, so I'm going to make sure that I did get it on R2B, and I did. Okay, so then I continue on as R3B, and so then I come down here to mid right thigh, and I'll drag that onto R3B. And then let me guess, R4B, sure enough. And we've got some stuff in the way here. So I'm going to close some things down so I can get to this. Otherwise, all I have to do is get rid of that window and that shows up too. But I didn't want to do that. So, okay, so right thigh goes on to R4B. And now I'm not going to go through that, but you do that same process on the other side. And now for Arachnoid himself, I'm going to select Arachnoid, and you can use the material selector to get to know the various names of the different parts that are on here. Okay. And then you go into geometry selector, and I'm going to go geometry selection, select by, and look at some different options that you have in here, because you might find it easier to select by surface um, or by face group. And some artists have other identifiers that would be located in here. These identifiers are all done by the original author. Okay, so What I want to do is I want to select the armrest, geometry selection, select by armrest end, geometry selection, select by face groups. Let's get rid of the body and select by dome, geometry selection, select by, and what I'm looking for is anything that is not a leg. Geometry selection, select by face groups, joystick R. Okay, and so now these are going probably all legs. And so this is part of the body. That's the left part of the body. There's the other part of the body that moves. It's part of the moving parts of the body. And you you don't have to. You can keep some of this stuff if it works for your kit bash. For this particular one, I'm making it all about the spider bot mech. So select by it can be a bit of a burden to try and do this stuff while you're talking. You lose train of thought on one side of things or another. It doesn't matter because I already did it, so I don't really have to save this. I'm just showing you guys. Geometry selection, select by face groups and head. Did I get the seat? Geometry selection, select by face group, seat, just in case. And now, if you're not sure, or if you just want to be safe, because you can, like I said before, you cannot undo deleting polygons. And when you're deleting the polygons, it's different from deleting them over here. If you deleted them over here, it breaks the figure. If you just delete the polygons, that's just the mesh. You're leaving the rig behind. Okay. The rig stays intact. So anyway, if you want to be on the safe side, you can go geometry, visibility, hide selected polygons. But the thing about doing that is you can't bring those polygons back from, back to visibility without losing the selection. Right now, we've just lost the selection of that. But that's okay because that's what we wanted to get rid of, and we can verify by hiding this spider mech. Yeah, see, these screens are part of those are parented inside the spider bot. So to hide those, you just come in here and hide the screens. But I wasn't doing that. I'm just looking to see if there were any parts of the arachnid. I did something. Okay, I'm just going to undo because there we go, undo parent change. Now, all I wanted to do is that. One of the latest updates kind of made some things finicky in here. Okay. Okay, now that we have the selection, but then we've hidden the selection instead of deleting it, if we save it that way, when we come back, that it'll all be visible again. I don't just hide it like that. Um, I remove it. If you don't want to remove it, you could just use all of those shaders and make it invisible. But I like to be a lot more efficient than that because that is a lot of polygons. So I go to geometry editing and I go delete hidden polygons. And that will see we're getting rid of 58,000, in addition to what we've already gotten rid of. Okay. And we're not going to use them anyway. We're replacing that with this, and we can make all kinds of different variations. So you could save this before you get rid of that part of the arachnoid, and just so that you have like, well, it doesn't matter because Anyway, it's all very easy to do. Even if you had to start over from scratch right here, it's really easy to do. So now I'm going to select the spider bot. And what I want is I want to put these legs closer to where I want them on the spider bot. But instead of moving the legs, I'm just going to move the spider bot. And that will be just back in Z a little bit here. I'm going to bring them down just a little bit. Now we've got this guy, and he still has all of his controls because we didn't remove the fact that this guy is a figure. We didn't convert this one into a prop. That was just this spider props, which we still have. So if we still want to make some more parts, we can. Oops, wrong one. This one. And now that I have this guy, this spider bot placed the way I want him, now we just parent him to the head. And I think what I was going to say before, the nice part about working that way is it's very fluid. From this point forward, as we start to work with this guy, which might as well start now, as we start working with him, we can make changes as we go because this guy is a full figure, but it's parented to the head of another rig. And so if we want to change something about that, we can actually even animate that change if we want. But let's take a look at what we've done and pretend that we've done the leg thing on both sides. Okay. Now we'll come back to Arachnid. And to get that, I'm going to go back to my poser formats. I'm going to select Arach and poses and Arachnoid. And let's just go back to the default Arachnoid pose, which is going to turn them 90 degrees again. And then all I have to do is go like this, 90 degrees. And there we have that's what he looks like in his default pose. And you can see that, where I've got the body placed according to the legs and everything like that, it looks really, really cool.